Darkness rises, and light to meet it.
The Force, it calls to you. Who are you?
My fellow Jedi and Padawan friends, this is Jason with Star Wars and Philosophy, and we're going to do our second video on Poe Dameron, and we're going to be using the visual dictionary for The Last Jedi as well as the Art of the Last Jedi, and we're going to be answering the question that had been proposed by some: is Poe Dameron a chauvinistic sexist in Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi? And we're going to also be dealing with a lot of interesting details that we picked up from the visual dictionary, The Art of the Last Jedi. So go ahead and stay tuned. If you want to be entered into a drawing to win a gift card of your choice for $20, here's how you do it. You click on the subscribe button, and you're also going to need to share this video on social media. That's all you have to do.
BB-8, punch it! It's now or never!
Ben! You must have 1,000 questions.
Where's Rey?
Permission to jump in her next wing and blow something up?
Permission granted.
What do you see? We are the spark that'll light the fire that'll burn the First Order down.
So, is Poe Dameron a chauvinistic sexist? And if you've seen The Last Jedi, spoilers, by the way, if you haven't gotten that by now, but this question has been proposed by some who took Poe's statement when he first saw Vice Admiral Holdo. He said, "Wow, not what I expected." That's all he said. But what was read into that is, I was expecting a man. Now, you tell me in the comments down below whether that's warranted or not, but I'm going to shoot that down with one very key insight from the visual dictionary, and it's obvious throughout The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi that Poe respects Leia. And I think that is an understatement. Poe just admires a ton Leia, right? I mean, he just looks up to her and her wisdom, her guidance, her words, and what she thinks about him and his strategies mean a lot to him. Now, I know he, turned the comm off when Leia commanded him to come back, but that's dealing with his, arrogance, that's dealing with his other issues. But he respects Leia, and that is canon, okay? So you can't say that Poe has a problem with women if he greatly respects Leia. Plus, the other thing I found out is that he has an awesome mom, okay? Shara Bay is her name, and he actually, Poe is wearing a ring necklace, okay? A necklace with a ring. That ring is his mom's wedding ring. And he's hoping to give that ring to the woman, the lucky woman who becomes his wife. Now, does that sound sexist to you? Oh my gosh. But that is his mom, Shara Bay, and she flew in the Green Squadron on the Battle of Endor, at the Battle of the Death Star. Okay, she has been with Leia. She defended Naboo in Operation Cinder, and she went with Luke to retrieve fragments of a great force tree that happened to be the original force tree that was in the temple, the Jedi temple in Coruscant, and the tree was gotten rid of and held in Imperial chambers because after Order 66, what they did is they actually turned the Coruscant Temple into Imperial Palace. And so that is Poe's mom. Now think about this. This leads me into another question. This whole force tree, which Luke Skywalker gave Shara Bay, Poe's mom, one of the fragments of the force tree in which her and her husband then planted in their home, at their home. So Poe grew up with a force tree from Coruscant in the Jedi Temple in his front yard. Now, that leads me into another question regarding Poe. I thought about it when I saw The Force Awakens. I thought about it again when I saw the opening scene of The Last Jedi. That guy is the best pilot we have ever seen in Star Wars. And I know that's a bold statement. Comments down below. I know those are fighting words because you got Han Solo, you've got Anakin, you've got some good pilots in Star Wars. So for me to make that statement, and he's so good of a pilot that it makes me think there's no way in the world that he is not tapping into the Force when he gets behind, the wheel, so to speak, of his pilots when he's piloting, because he does some crazy, wicked stuff in that plane, in those jets, and all of the above. Okay, so is he Force sensitive? I want to know your comments down below. What do you think? Do you think that's ever going to realize itself in anything else other than flying skills? Or do you think that that's just it? I know that this is kind of stretching it because Oscar Isaac, they were not really planning for Poe to be a character and throughout the entirety of The Force Awakens, much less The Last Jedi. When he crashed and everybody thought that he died, he was supposed to have died, but they loved his acting skills and loved him as an actor so much and working with him that they kept him around. And so, in a sense, you can kind of see like they had to kind of build a character story for him. That was Rian Johnson's task, that was handed to him. And so what you have is a storyline, and we talked about this in the last video, is that he's having to learn. Every character in The Last Jedi is on this like character arc that they're learning a lesson through failure. Okay, and it kind of goes to Yoda's quote, failure being our greatest teacher. It's the greatest thing we pass on. And so Poe, his failure happens to be with listening to authority, respecting authority, and being okay with not knowing everything. Again, we talked about that in the last video, okay? So let's get into some other things about Poe that we've learned. That he's actually relieved that he's not the successor, but upset that it was Holdo. And it's not because she's a woman. I don't know what his beef is with her necessarily. I'm going to do a separate video on Holdo and what we learn about her. But being that Poe and his family have a past with Leia, and that past probably intersects in some way with Holdo, but he's never met her clearly because he's saying, oh, that's not what I expected. And that line, by the way, actually, when I was reading in The Art of the Last Jedi, everyone expected for Holdo to show up, kind of like the Jyn Erso character, kind of like in military garb, the tough woman leader. And Rian Johnson says, no. I want her to stand out. I want her to be elegant and stand for nobility and class and poise. And she's going to be different. And so his line was kind of like saying that out loud. Like what everybody was kind of expecting. What? You're in a dress? Really? And you're in charge? I expected something different. So that's how I actually took that line, and I think most people, but you can tell me down below, what did you think that line meant, okay? So, but the thing that was surprising to me about this is that I kind of had it pegged that Poe was going to be the natural successor to Leia after Carrie Fisher's death. I just thought that it was going to happen, and it ends up happening, but not in the way that I thought, okay? And I think I like what they did, is they took Poe's character and they developed him into a leader. He's not a natural leader, and he doesn't necessarily want leadership. That's what I learned, is that he was, I thought he was let down when he wasn't put in charge, but to find out he actually was relieved at that moment that he wasn't the one who was supposed to be put in charge, even though he then goes in total insubordination and causes a lot of chaos, actually causes more death to his crew and decimates the resistance even more. before he finally learns his lesson, mostly by watching the sacrifice of Holdo, watching the leadership of Leia. Okay, both women that Poe's learning from. He's not a sexist. Okay, so next is was Poe a different character than The Force Awakens? Okay, so this is something that people have been bringing up, is like a number of characters, they just don't feel like The Last Jedi was a true sequel to The Force Awakens. They felt like the characters were totally different. And I don't think so. And it's actually explained that, Poe, because of his success with Starkiller Base and with some of his other successes, finding the map to Luke Skywalker, he's kind of integral in a way. Because of those things, he became super arrogant. And that's what led him to do what he did in defying Leia's command. And it cost him the life of his people, which he wasn't even seeming to be aware of. When he came back, he's just on cloud nine. Hey, we got the dreadnought. And Leia says, at what cost? Okay? And she's trying to teach him a valuable lesson. But, some people, the main reason they're asking this is because of the humor. Okay? Like his insubordination and the humor. They just felt like it was uncharacteristic. The second time I went to see The Last Jedi, I watched The Force Awakens the day before, and I had it fresh in my mind. And I got to tell you, all of the characters, Rey, Finn, Poe, Luke, all of them, Kylo, across the board, all of them seem like the exact same characters to me. And some people just didn't appreciate the humor, especially that thing with the, him doing the crank call basically to buy time with General Hux and just totally messing with him. I thought it was hilarious. Some people have said that with the humor that they in their theater that there was absolutely no laughter. There's no dead silence. I've seen it twice, and both times everybody around me was completely laughing every time that there was a joke. Okay, so I don't know if it's just that some places are a little bit more stuck up or expect a little bit more or don't like humor in Star Wars. I don't know what it is, but that was a different perception on my neck of the woods than other people's. Now, the other thing that's interesting is that whole, bomber scene. 5 o'clock high, it was named as, that was a huge influence. But the other thing I want to address here is this, that some people have criticized The Last Jedi because they feel like it's pushing social agendas. Like the whole thing on Canto Bight and the cruelty to animals and humans and slavery and all that kind of stuff, which is going to become a big thing. I'll get into that with Rose's video. What's going on with that boy with the broom and the force powers, all that kind of stuff. Well, some people have criticized it, saying like Star Wars was never pushing social agendas. But that's not true. It's just that a lot of people who are hardcore fans now were young. They were like kids or teenagers or young adults when Star Wars first came out. And they're just not aware of the social agendas and the social realities that George Lucas was addressing when he wrote the original trilogy. Namely, Vietnam, World War II, the Cold War, Russia, all those things. Huge hot button issues that he was writing against, reacting against. And if you don't think that there's some elements of like Nazi Germany in the First Order or even in the Galactic Empire, okay, those kind of things, which I think was like more like, to me, it was almost like Rome, the Emperor and that whole journey. But you do have stormtroopers, right? I mean, hello. But the ships, they originally wanted to have the bombers be able to defend themselves more, but Rian Johnson resisted every time, and the Avro Lancaster B-52 kind of bomber was a testament to George's influences from Vietnam and World War II. And Rian was paying tribute to George Lucas by incorporating those things into it. And, bombers have something we've never seen in a Star Wars movie, and it's directly linked to George Lucas and some of the things that he was addressing when he first made the Star Wars trilogy. So Again, I don't want to hear any nonsense about, you know, social justice and feminism ruining Star Wars or anything like that. At least not yet. Not that I'm seeing, okay? The other thing that was interesting is Poe was supposed to go with Finn to Cenobite. And so he came up with a plan. He was originally supposed to go with him, but then they discovered that Finn and Poe, and two guys, and they realized that almost every one of their lines was like interchangeable in terms of like it just didn't go anywhere, and it seemed like it dragged on. Now, some people think that whole Counterbite thing dragged on anyway and shouldn't have been incorporated, but that's a whole nother video. Again, we're going to deal with Counterbite, but this is where Rose's character was actually born, is because they took Poe out of that picture. Finn had to go with somebody, and so now he went with Rose, and then Rose became the sister of Paige, who is that bomber who dies in that opening scene, okay? And that's where that whole thing comes in. And so people saying that like Rose was a really integral character from the beginning, that's not true. She may turn out to be a super cool one, just like, you know, Poe. He turned out to be kind of an interesting character, even though they originally intended to kind of kill him off in the first movie. So anyway, though, that's what I have for today. Go ahead and give me your comments down below. What do you think about Poe's character? What do you see and anticipate for his character arc in Episode 9? Do you think that he's going to be a good leader? Do you think that he's going to mesh well with Finn and Rey? And what do you think that they're going to do to respond to the threat of the First Order? I want to know all your thoughts. If there's something you'd like for me to cover Star Wars related, especially in regards to Star Wars and philosophy, I'd love to do that. Comments down below.
Fulfill your destiny.
Please like, subscribe, and share this video with others and this channel with others.